The Earth is Alive by kirbykitty743. I saw it with my own eyes. I was working for an oil mining business, one of those contract labor jobs you take to get you through another month. It's not glamorous, but it's a paycheck. We were expanding and finding new sites to dig into and extract oil from. To start a new dig, Michael, the foreman on my project, would prime the spot by hammering a huge nail into the ground to open up a hole or crack, and we'd set up our boring machine to drill down into it. 3,000 feet later, voila, liquid gold. We were priming a spot in New Mexico, in the desert at least 75 miles out from the nearest suburb or town. It was just me and Michael there at the crack of dawn to get the process started. The rest of the team would be rolling in a few hours later with the drilling machine. The sun had just peeked over the flat horizon, and sharp rays of light cut through the gray sky as we began our work. Crouching, Michael set the nail's tip against the dry ground and brought the hammer down hard. But it didn't sink into the ground as we had expected, it only went in a little bit. Michael looked at me in confusion, and then, with new resolve, brought the hammer down harder than before. The ground cracked, but this time the crack grew wider than we'd ever seen. It looked like a strange, demented smile. And then it grew of its own accord, quickly spreading out from the nail, getting longer, wider, and then deeper. "What the?" Michael breathed. The crack twisted and turned, and we could hear what sounded like rocks breaking as it carved trenches into the once solid earth, and then veered towards us. The pivot seemed intentional, but it couldn't be. That's not how nature worked, and I knew it. The crack snaked its way toward Michael, opening like a mouth as it approached him, and as he took a step back, he stumbled and fell into the ground's growing gaping wound. He yelled out in surprise while I stood there in shock and awe, still mentally slow from the morning, partially unconvinced that this wasn't a dream I'd yet to wake from. Michael then screamed out in agony, effectively yanking me out of my stupor. I scrambled to do something. Anything. He reached out his hand and his fingers fastened like a vice grip around my arm. I tried to hoist him out, but he wouldn't budge, his screams filling my ears. I looked down and saw that his foot appeared stuck or crushed, and as I looked I noticed that I could see less and less of his foot as if he was sinking. Then I noticed that the long crack that started this was gone. Michael's foot seemed to be trapped in a hole created especially for him. It was like a mouth clamped tightly around his legs with no space around him. And that's when I saw it. The rocky ground surrounding him was creeping inward, like a circular conveyor belt with him at the center, as if Earth itself was turning inside out, determined to move him deeper into its belly. I was hit with the sudden realization that he was being eaten alive, but by what? Nothing made sense, but I was watching it happen. With Michael still screaming, I threw all of my weight into trying to pull him out, but there wasn't a chance. The ground had swallowed him up to his knees by now. The next moments went by quickly, but my mind played it in slow motion, as I watched his pelvis disappear next, and then watched him vomit blood as his lungs were crushed. And as it finally consumed his head, I heard the haunting sound of his skull being crushed, and saw bloody chunks of brain squeeze out of any opening they could find. And then, the earth was whole again. The crack closed up and smoothed over, leaving nothing behind but blood-drenched dirt. Instinct kicked in as I subconsciously called 911 and babbled incoherent cries for help. I was mostly catatonic when the ambulance and my coworkers arrived. I'm told my eyes were unfocused and crazy with terror, and all I could say was it took him over and over. Police put me under intense scrutiny and interrogation in the days after. Everyone thought I had done something to Michael, but they couldn't conceive of how I'd hidden the body so quickly in the middle of nowhere. When they took a shovel to the spot where it happened, they found him, reduced to crushed bones and decomposing flesh. It was like he'd been stretched out or put through a human-sized dough roller. His head was just beneath the surface, but his feet were 9 feet down. The authorities couldn't make sense of it, but I could. I saw the way the earth turned inside out, flattening and dragging him in. No one asked me to explain anything, though. They just scratched their heads, baffled, and since there was no possible way I could have done that to him, the case on me was dropped and moved into the annals of unsolved mystery. I took a long leave of absence from work, and during that time I spent most of my time bumbling around at home and watching TV, and what I started seeing on the news struck me with both fear and validation. Stories of people mysteriously disappearing started popping up here and there. Miners, demolitionists, deforesters, polluters, explosive fishermen. Anytime witnesses appeared, they'd sound like lunatics raving about the earth swallowing people whole, or inexplicable ocean swells pulling them down and away into the depths, never to surface even as corpses. Not long after those stories began, they stopped. I had started keeping an archive of them like an obsessive maniac, reading and rereading as many of them as I could, finally feeling like maybe I wasn't crazy after all. Then the links I'd saved stopped working. And one by one, the stories would get taken down or the sites disabled. Rumor has it the government is trying to avoid mass panic by keeping it off the news. According to a few trustworthy sources I've found, including some friends I made here who have experienced similar events, the freak occurrences aren't over. In fact, they're becoming more numerous. I heard about a power plant in China that was leveled overnight just 2 days ago with 62 people inside. They all went missing, the report said, before it was taken down like the others. They aren't missing, though. Once someone thinks to do a little digging, they'll find all 62 of those poor souls embedded in the earth like Michael was, stretched like taffy. For now, I'm laying low. I know it thinks about me, though. I can't even put my finger on what I'm talking about. It sounds crazy, but if the earth really is alive and taking revenge on people it considers enemies, I was there with Michael that day. It must have noticed me. When I look out my window, I swear the trees are leaning ever so slightly in my direction, like they're watching me, waiting to pounce. And just a few minutes ago, I felt a rumble in the ground beneath my feet. And again, just now, a little stronger. Did you feel that?